What up, perps? Kid Copious back in effect. Purple State Party. You know what we're doing here? We're repping America, the center, and common sense. And lately, California. Well, we got a lot to cover, so let's kick it off. So for, about 6 years plus now, I haven't missed a week. I almost missed this week. I had to move my mom into my house. She was living at her own house with my brother. And the long story short, we had to call the cops several times this week. He drove out one set of caretakers, the professional ones. We brought in a friend that had been helping to take care of my mom for quite some time. Even took care of my dad when he was sick before he passed. And my brother physically assaulted her. So we launched a pre-dawn raid and got her out of the house. He, in turn, called the police on us, tried to say that we took my mom against her will, but, they didn't really respond to that because they had been there the day before and literally heard him screaming at her. You know, mental abuse is real. And this being May, this is Mental Health Month, and, I'm happy to say that just one day over here, and my mom's an entirely different person. She's not isolated. She's not getting yelled at constantly. She's not having political rhetoric thrown in her face. My brother is he voted for Kamala Harris. My mom voted for Trump. She doesn't really like to hear that stuff. She's not, I don't talk about it. You would think somebody who does a political podcast would talk about politics all the time. And, if you know me, I do tend to bring up things, but I'm not wedded to either side. I mean, Purple State is in the middle. So it's been a tough week, but I'm here. I'm on the air again, and we're just gonna do this thing. So Steve Hilton, who's running for governor, attacked Gavin Newsom's government diaper program, saying that the state's paying 50 cents a diaper when a box at Target works out to 16 cents. I think taking taxpayer money and giving low income or even illegals diapers for their baby, I think that's great. I mean, that's the kind of expenditure I can get behind, because that's money that's actually helping people. But, Newsom strongly disputed Hilton's math, saying it was inaccurate. They're saying that the budget actually contains not $20 million, but $6.2 million for baby to baby. That equates to 15.5 cents per diaper. I don't buy that really because I know how these charities work, especially these ones that are supported by the lefties. They have high salaries, they have high overhead. I think that number is closer to 50 cents. Businessman Marcus Lamont weighed in on the debate in his post on X. Math always wins. My daughter's getting her degree in mathematics. Fox News contributor Joey Jones had this to say: if Democrats really cared about this issue, making it easier to raise a family in California, don't charge them $2 extra for a gallon of gas because it needs to be a special California gas. And there's a crazy, weird surcharge that we don't even know where it comes from. Yeah, the underground storage tax. I don't know why that's there. He went on to say, don't do things like spend $100 million on a land bridge so California cougars can get from one side of the interstate to the other, Jones said. What do? You can put a Band-Aid on a tourniquet problem and run for president. Yeah, and that's essentially what Newsom's doing. He's punted every major thing down the road. And, when it comes to issues, problems, things like that, it's no different than getting a wound. You get scratched by something, right? If you don't clean it and put antibiotics on it and keep it covered and all that, what happens? Infection breeds and spreads. And you could take a simple scratch and die from it. And that's what we're seeing here in California. We're not seeing politicians who are trying to tackle problems or fix problems. We're seeing politicians who just want to get themselves clear and collect a paycheck. And speaking of that, Karen Bass. LA firefighters turned up on Karen Bass's doorstep with demands and give a doomsday warning to the city. And I don't think doomsday is a hyperbole. When we get into this, the firefighters spent their own money to get a half-cent sales tax added to pay for firefighters. And again, that's something I could get behind. Okay? We're each going to pay, a half cent, and that's going to add up to millions of dollars that will be used for the firefighters. We'll get to this in a minute here. The LA Fire Department bosses have warned for months that they're desperately overstretched with a massive cash shortfall, and some staff are even going unpaid while pulling mammoth 48-hour shifts fighting the flames. But in her budget last month, Karen Bass refused to raise the funding despite the deadly wildfires that we had that wiped out the Palisades. Wiped them out. So they showed up with 200,000 signatures. They want to bring the tax up by half a cent to fund more firefighters, ambulances, fire trucks, and fix crumbling decades-old stations. Firefighters say the campaign has become the last-ditch attempt to stop response times from slipping even further. This comes from Rich Ramirez, the vice president of the United Firefighters of Los Angeles City, Local 112. We have the same amount of firefighters as we did in 1960, with a call volume that's now 5 times greater. Yeah. In 1960, LA firefighters responded to about 100,000 calls annually. Today, they're getting 500,000. And a lot of those are homeless people ODing on the streets. They should be responding within 4.5 minutes. Right now, they're almost at 8 minutes. And as he says, when every second counts, someone is having a heart attack, someone is trapped in a car, someone can't breathe. Yeah, we're not funding that, but we're funding all of this other crazy shit that we're funding in LA. All of these social programs that are supposed to raise people's awareness about different issues. We need firefighters. Because remember, they don't just fight fires. They're out there for heart attacks and things like that. They're so desperate that they funded this petition to raise the sales tax. Think about what our government in California, and maybe in wherever you are, they raise taxes and then they blow it on stupid shit. We're going to get to it a little later, but right now there's the high-speed rail wants to take local taxes for something that we don't need. And they had to stand down during the Pacific Palisades because they didn't want to pay the overtime. So another one of the presidents of the Firefighters Union, Freddie Escobar, has filed a defamation lawsuit against Mayor Karen Bass, claiming that her office conducted a smear campaign. Remember, right after that, they labeled the LA Fire Department Chief, Kristen Crowley, as a DEI hire who wasn't qualified. Well, that's true, maybe. But she was complaining about the systemic underinvestment in her department. So she was let go. Since the 1960s, the population of LA has jumped from 2.5 million to nearly 4 million. Meanwhile, the city firefighting corps has expanded by a total of 8 positions. 8. And our amount of fire stations went from 112 to 106. We've gone backwards in LA. And LA, with its homeless population and its wild areas, we need firefighters here. But what we also need is we need to think about how do we move forward? Because right now we're just moving forward with the old building, the so-called straw houses and stick homes. The stick homes are built by more modern code, but wood construction in certain areas just doesn't make any sense. They're suspending the permit process to get these things rebuilt, but nobody's considering that maybe we need to change the building material. There's things, concrete, steel. Those things fare much better against a fire. There are better ways of building these houses. There's treated wood, For example, when a tornado leveled Joplin, Missouri in 2011, the city adopted significantly stronger building standards. See, we're not talking about environmental regulations. We're talking about building standards because that's what we need. Oddly enough here, I'm going to agree with President Obama. Was not a great fan of his. But when he was speaking at Katrina's 10th anniversary, Katrina, Hurricane Katrina that wiped out parts of New Orleans, he said real change takes time and the courage to do things differently. And that's what we need. We need to realize that we can't keep kicking it down the road. At some point, we need to address these issues, and we can't be waiting, because as that article about the fire says, the wolf is still out there. And that's what we need. We need to change the way we are doing things in LA, in California, in the United States. We need to change the way we're doing things. And believe it or not, speaking of changing the way we do things, we're going to talk about Spencer Pratt. Spencer Pratt went to Nithya Raman's own backyard out there in the valley, Sherman Oaks, San Fernando Valley. And a lot of residents there are sick of living there. They're scared. There's been a string of violent burglaries. As of right now, LAPD data shows that the area accounts for 40% of all burglaries in the city. And so anyhow, Pratt fired off a tweet that talked about, well, let's just read what it says here. Pratt fired off a blistering public safety message accusing city leaders of pointing to falling crime statistics while ignoring what residents are experiencing on the streets. It's easy, he says, to say crime is down when you simply stop responding to crimes. The moms here at this meeting, he said, do not feel safe. And that's true. There's residents here who were talking about the fact that her house was burglarized. The police took more than an hour to arrive because they're understaffed. I don't feel safe in my own home, this woman said. And she also explained that one Sunday she was at a grocery store with her children, and a thief pepper sprayed her and tried to steal her purse. I mean, this is what people are asking for. This is why Pratt is now at 22% and Bass is at 30%. Because we can't keep doing the same old, same old. That doesn't make any sense. Right now there's a campaign being funded by somebody. We don't know. I didn't see who it was. It wasn't Pratt directly. But they're billboard trucks. And it says, Spencer, take out the Bassura. Bassura, Spanish for trash. Bass, B-A-S-S, right? Karen Bass, the mayor. Because they're not doing anything. I don't dislike Karen Bass because she's a woman or she's black or she's a Democrat. I don't like her because she's not doing anything. She touts these fake statistics. Like we said earlier, Gavin Newsom putting a Band-Aid on a wound that needs a tourniquet. And that's what's happening right now. I mean, you really have to ask yourself, is a D next to their name really worth all this? Is a D next to their name worth that? I'm not saying vote for an R. I'm saying vote for somebody down the middle. Somebody who's not going to try to outlaw abortion but will clean up the streets. That's what we need. Oddly enough, right now, the unions are against Spencer Pratt. You know why? Because Bass butters their bread, and they don't know if Pratt will butter their bread. But this is the ad that they ran. Republican Spencer Pratt is the last thing Los Angeles needs for the mayor. Pratt opposes using taxpayer money to build brand new houses for unhoused neighbors, saying it's time for the homeless to get help or get out. Yeah, because the problem with the people on the streets is not the unhoused. It's the drug addicts. It's the crazy people. It's the people who don't want to abide by rules. And if you give them a house, they're just going to loot the copper out of it. The ad went on to say, Pratt thinks LA needs thousands more police officers rather than more social workers. And Republican Spencer Pratt thinks public employee unions should have less power, not more power. The ad continued, LA is on the right track and needs to stay the course. Where? But you know what's odd about this? The LA Times ran this next article. What they're doing is they're positioning Pratt as the second candidate. Because, see, here in California, we do the stupid shit where we have a fucking election and the top 2 vote getters go for the actual election. It's like an elimination process. And we saw this with when Adam Schiff was running. He didn't want to face another Democrat. Karen Bass doesn't want to face another Democrat. So let's get all of the independents and Republicans behind Spencer Pratt, or in the case of Adam Schiff, Steve Garvey. Because then when the ballot comes out, it's going to say Bass versus Pratt. LA, it only has about 19% Republican. And that's why I talk to Democrats. Is the D next to her name really worth it? Does it really matter whose team it is? This isn't football. This isn't soccer. This isn't about your team needs to win. We all need to win. And that's not going to happen under Karen Bass. We've already seen it. But as we were talking about ads, let's move on to a different one here. Y'all know that song, that one, 1-800-CARS-FOR-KIDS. That little jingle. Well, it got pulled off the air in California for false advertising. The charity fails to mention it funnels about $45 million annually to Jewish nonprofit that organizes Israel trips for teens. That's not all they do. They also fund summer camps in the tri-state area. Yeah, that's not California, Nevada, and Arizona. That's back east, which is fine. And I really don't have a problem with this charity, URA, building a building in Israel, or sending Jewish teenagers to Israel, or sending younger Jewish students to summer camp. I have no problem with that. I love the Jews. I am Israel, 100%. Like, I am not bothered by that at all. But I've known about this for a lot of years, that this is what they do. But it is false advertising, because a lot of people thought that they were helping, disadvantaged kids, low-income kids in the local area. But they're not. And they don't make any bones about it. It's not like they are trying to be secretive. I mean, they kind of leave it out of the ads. But, they get about 120,000 cars donated nationwide, and about approximately 30,000 of those, about 1 in 4 cars comes from California. And if it's not benefiting California charities, then why in the hell are we donating to it? And we should know that. Excuse me. I mean, if you want to tell us that what the true purpose of this charity is, that's great. I, for one, make a monthly donation to the Shriners Hospital. I don't have to agree with the Shriners. I'm not exactly sure if they're a religious group or like a Masons group. They may be a secret society. They might be behind Atlantis. I don't know. It doesn't matter, because they're doing work for American children. And that's what's important to me. And I hate that freaking ad, and I'm glad it's gone, because that song was clearly an earworm. Earlier I mentioned the train, the high-speed rail. So basically what's happening is the rail authority thinks that when they bring the train or the train station, it's going to increase sales tax in an area, and they want a little taste of it. So instead of benefiting the communities that they go through, they want the money. Because this is a boondoggle. Okay, this is a boondoggle. It will take forever to make this thing financially viable, if ever. And now they want to take what's called tax increments. See, the rail authority is not proposing new or increased taxes, but it would like a portion of the rise in property and sales tax revenue, known as tax increments, created within a half mile of the station. Why? Why? Those communities should get that. The rail authority shouldn't get that. The rail authority is already getting a shit ton of taxpayer money. Now they want more? They haven't even built the frickin' train, and they're already figuring out how to line their pockets. That's what it is. The funding model known as tax increment financing is based on the idea that property values and sales tax revenues will rise with the arrival of the new high-speed rail and stations, so some of the extra money should help pay for the project. Really? That's what you think. I mean, there is no guarantee. And remember, the rail authority, when they were looking at how many riders they were going to have, they looked at France and Tokyo and then inflated the numbers from there. These are dishonest people who are lining their pockets. Anyhow, moving on. So we all know about AI. It's, I'm not going to say it doesn't have a place in society, but it doesn't. I'm not a fan, okay? But there is a new AI project, the Stratos project, okay? It is going to be bigger than 2,000 Walmarts. Isn't that insane? It is going to be spread out over 40,000 acres in Box Elder County, Utah, an area larger than many major cities. It is about twice the size of Manhattan. And beyond the physical side of this monstrosity in the middle of nature, it is going to require up to 9 gigawatts of power. For perspective, Utah, the state of Utah's current statewide electrical demands peak around 4 to 5 gigawatts. So this AI data center is going to require twice as much energy than Utah as a state uses. And it'll create massive amounts of heat and the dreaded carbon emissions. Yeah, because why? They're not going to be able to get the power from Utah, obviously. So they are going to have to run natural gas turbines. They're going to basically run all day long, dumping so much what they call like thermal load into the area. It's going to be so big that in that area, the Hansel Valley, the temperatures could rise by 5 degrees during the day and up to 28 degrees at night. That's not necessarily any good. The large-scale power generation, the industrial development, and rising temperatures could accelerate desertification and worsen air quality in surrounding communities. I mean, this is what baffles my mind. California wants to outlaw all gas-powered cars and make us drive electric. But then they're perfectly fine with these AI centers. I don't get it. I mean, this thing is going to require billions of gallons of water. And they say, we're going to get this saline water out of the ground. Water that's not useful for anything else. Right? But this isn't I guess what I should say here is one of the arguments that these people make for AI is that we need to be able to keep up with our enemies. I agree with that, but that doesn't require a 2,000 Walmart giant AI center. If we're talking about national security, that's much smaller. If all it's being used for is AI national security, that's a much smaller building. But here's the thing. These buildings, I have some experience. I know people who design the fire systems for these. These buildings go up really quickly, so it's not like a long-term build, because basically all it is 4 walls and a floor and a ceiling. And then as far as job creation, each of these centers might employ 50 people, not all at the same time. Because all you really need is a few people to keep the systems, maybe some janitors, maybe a couple administrators. So it's not like it's a boon for the local economy. But the worst part is when they rely on the water and the electricity from the nearby communities, the price of those things go up. And the truth of the matter is we don't really need AI for as much as we're using it for right now. Drawing cartoons. Look at your Instagram. You notice that overnight, all of a sudden your Instagram is just all kinds of AI slop? Right now, 7 in 10, 71% of Americans oppose nearby construction of data centers, with only half of those opposed to building a nuclear energy plant. Do you know why? Because when they're running these natural gas turbines to create the electricity, those are jet engines. So can you imagine being near a multiple jet engines that are just roaring day and night? That is really, really concerning. That's what we're going to put up with. We're going to do environmental damage. We're going to pollute the air even more. We're going to drive up the cost of water and electricity for the residents. We're not really creating that many jobs. And a lot of those jobs are going to come from overseas, I'm guessing, or they'll be monitored from overseas, because that's what they do. The people who monitor the AI centers are in India. Some of them are even in Ukraine. That's fine. That's great. Create jobs over there, but that's not going to really help. Who's that help? That doesn't help Americans. And we are wrecking the economy, the environment. I mean, I'm not an environmentalist. I am environmentally friendly, I like to say. But these things are a disaster. And what's going to happen when they're all done? When they need to build new ones or the old ones start to crumble? What are they going to do? That's just more pollution across the board. So we're going to end it, last week we talked about how Gavin Newsom didn't want to suspend the gas taxes here in California, which would save a lot of money. But Trump has come out saying he wants to suspend the federal gas tax. I think it won't help individuals because the federal gas tax, I believe, is 18% for regular, unleaded. But it's about 25 cents for truck, diesel, in other words. So that might, in turn, if the logistics companies start saving money, shipping costs might go down. So Trump could help out a little bit, but he's willing to do it. And, it's what you call an easy win. And these politicians love easy wins. Gavin Newsom with his diaper thing. That's an easy win. But is he managing it? Or are we just wasting money that we don't need to waste on diapers? Because we don't really, we already have infrastructure to distribute diapers. We don't need to bring in another company. I don't see that, But I mean, look at Los Angeles. We need firefighters, period. We need cops, period. We don't need social workers because, believe me, with what's going on with my mom, social workers haven't even gotten back to us. We have filed several APS reports, Adult Protective Services. We got my brother yelling and screaming at her, bringing strangers into the house, partying at the house, bringing strippers to the house, leaving the doors unlocked all night long, smoking in the house. We can't get any movement. The police were there, and they can't do anything. The police can't even process the report that where he assaulted one of the caregivers. There's not enough officers to go around. There's not enough money, and we've diluted our laws to the point where they really side with the criminals. I mean, LA needs a homeless abatement. We don't need moving sidewalks and a no cars Olympic. See, that's my biggest problem I have with the Democrats, okay? Look, I live in a state that is controlled by Democrats, California, all right? So I don't have a lot of experience with how Republicans run things at a state or city level, all right? I know what I see in the state. And what I see in the state is a bunch of meaningless shit. A bunch of statistics that have been tweaked to make you look good. What I see, quite frankly, is what we talked about at the beginning of the show. It's a wound that needs a tourniquet and you're slapping a Band-Aid over it. And then running for president. We have to get serious. We have to start looking for actual people who are going to try to make a difference, that have a passion, that have a skin in the game. That's one of the reasons I like Spencer Pratt, because he has a skin in the game. He literally lost his house in the Palisades fire. His house might have been saved if we had enough firefighters, if we had enough water, if we had a reservoir. That reservoir that was empty during the Palisades is still empty. The homeless are stealing fire hydrants. And the Democrats go, it's all good. It's not all good. It's not worth it just to have a D next to a person's name. It just isn't. Anyhow, thanks for listening, sticking around, all that. Love ya. I'm Kid Copious on Purple State Party, and so are you. Love one another. Keep on grinding. And, until I find something better to close the show, we're just going to end it the way we've been ending it. When it gets too much, dance it out.